So today we're with Lucy Barnes, with Agata Morka, and with Tom Mosterd. So, Jess, do you want to introduce yourself a bit before we start knowing a bit more about the Open Access Book Network and what you do and what the future holds for you? So, Lucy, would like to start?
Yep, I can go first. So I'm Lucy Barnes, and I am obviously, Laura, I'm one of your colleagues. So I'm an editor and outreach coordinator at Open Book Publishers. And I also work with the Scholar-led consortium. I do outreach work on the Copen project, and I am now part of the Open Access Books Network. So yeah, looking forward to talk some more about what we're trying to do.
Fantastic, thank you so much. So Agata, do you want to come next?
Sure. My name is Agata Morka. Hello, everyone. I am also one of your colleagues. I work, well, actually of all of you. So I work with Lucy, with Tom, and with Laura on different projects. I mainly look into alternative business models for open access books in my role at Open Book Publishers. And now I am engaged in the Open Access Books Network project together with Lucy and Tom.
Thank you so much. So, Tom, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Mosterd. I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm also involved in the Open Access Books network. And next to that, also, I work at the Directory of Open Access Books and OAPEN as their community manager. And also, I work on the recently launched platform, the Open Access Books Toolkit. So, in all, 3 platforms for open access books and one network.
You're all busy people. So if that's okay, I will start throwing some questions at you guys, and you can choose, whoever wants to go for them, feel free. So the first one is why and when did you decide to create the Open Access Book Network?
Yeah, I can kick off with that one. So there's a bit of a long tail to it, really. There were sort of discussions going back to kind of 2018 that it would be good to have a forum to talk about open access books issues. Obviously, there's lots of places to talk about open access, but books often tend to be drowned out by discussions of journal issues. So I think it was felt that it would be good to have a place for people to be able to connect and talk specifically about books. And then in 2019 at the LPUB conference, there was a panel on the idea, and the discussions kind of formalized a little bit. And a Slack channel was set up with the intention that that would be the place where discussions could begin. And then at the beginning of this year, the Slack channel had gone a little bit quiet, and we were sort of thinking it would be good to have a platform that was more public, because obviously it's quite hard to find a Slack channel and to get access to it. So that was sort of when I became more closely involved with it, and then Agata and Tom came on board around sort of springtime. And a group of us, so there was Rupert Gatti from OBP, Vanessa Proudman from SCOS, Elka Fuera from OAPEN, Jeroen Sondervan and Ron Schneider also, various people kind of wanting to lead this idea that there should be a platform for us to talk about these issues in a kind of very open, public way. And we settled in the end on having a humanities commons platform, which I can share the link actually in the chat in case that's useful, which is just kind of free to join, easily joined, and people can just kind of join the platform and either have discussion or share events or share blog posts or share readings. So that's a kind of potted history of the network. But I don't know, Agata or Tom, if I can say anything or if you want to add anything in there.
I feel, Lucy, that you pretty much covered everything. Plus, both me and Tom, we came a little bit later to this game, so I think that you explained it brilliantly, I think, so far as to how it works. So I have nothing to add. Tom, unless you have something to add.
No, I agree with Agata.
Oh, that's great. Actually, you mentioned the Humanities Commons platform. So why did you decide to use that one in particular? Why did you decide to put all the output of the work in the Humanities Commons page?
Would like to jump on it? Should I? I mean, I can start, and then you can say other reasons. I think because it's pretty easy to use, which was one of the reasons I think that we're all a little bit tired with yet another platform where you have to really, even to join, to, I don't know, read a tutorial or watch a YouTube tutorial on joining the platform and so on and so on. So this one was relatively easy to set up, first of all, and relatively easy to manage on our side, because of course we have to manage it, we have to set it up. But also I think for people who want to join, it's pretty self-explanatory as to how to use it. It really, and how to join it, it takes 5 minutes pretty much. So the easiness of access and of management, I think, was one of the reasons for sure.
Yeah, and I think as well the fact that it kind of chimes with the open access ethos in quite a nice way. Like the platform itself is community developed, community owned, it's open source, and it's not the sort of academia.edu model where you sign up and they're desperately trying to get you to pay to go to a higher tier so you can have additional functionalities. There's none of that. They're not interested in tracking your data. It's very much it's a resource that's set up for academics to use and to make use of it, however they want to, without kind of exploiting them or taking advantage of them in any way. And I think that was appealing as well. Like Agata says, it's really easy to set up a profile. You don't have to put anything really on there apart from your name if you don't want to, and then you can immediately start using the group function, which is what we wanted it for.
Yeah, and I think perhaps just to briefly add from my side, is that what I really like is that we still have the Slack channel as well for the Open Access Books Network, and it's also a great way to communicate with everyone else. But the Humanities Commons platform really has an advantage in the way that that we can also upload files there, store files, and start discussion threads. There's the blog site also there for the blogs we frequently post. So yeah, I think it pretty much has everything that we would like to see. Of course, there are always more things that we could do, but it helps us a lot in terms of working with the network.
And I think it's nice as well that they're quite responsive. So like one of the things that we found a little bit tricky in working with it is that the calendar, which is quite a useful function, you can put events in there. It's on, I think, Eastern Standard Time. So all the events show up in that time zone, and you can add manually. You can add like, oh, this is at 3 p.m. BST, 4 p.m. That's whatever. But it's a bit frustrating that it's only in that time zone. So we've messaged them, and they've said they've put it on their list for development. They want to try and add that functionality so that you can change the time zone of the calendar, and little things like that. Like they're very responsive to things that we like to see, which has been really great, especially as we're relatively new on the platform.
Well, that makes sense. So I was also thinking about what Lucy mentioned before. You mentioned some names that were actually involved in the setting up process of all the networks. So do you want to, any of you want to talk more about that? Who was in that process in particular? How did it came about? Was it a long process, short process to set up everything and have it ready before the launch? How was a bit in your experience of
that? Well, maybe I should take that one because I was sort of involved more in those earlier conversations. I guess initially it was quite open and quite exploratory. I mean, we're sort of limited to an extent what we can do time-wise, right? So although there were lots of ambitious plans, I think at the Alpha conference there were lots of ideas suggested which would be potentially really interesting but might need quite a lot of funding or dedicated staff time. And we can talk a bit more later, I guess, about how we're getting things going and how we're maintaining things, among the three of us. But I think in the end we had to focus on what was doable and what could we get off the ground relatively quickly. We didn't want to be planning anything for months on end and then not have anything to show at the end of it. So the conversations were basically sort of ended up clustering around the idea of the point of the network is really to enable people to communicate. That it's not that we want to go out there and say, oh, here's this thing, we've created it, all the stuff's on there already, come and passively absorb it. We want it to be a platform where people can take part and they can have discussions, they can start threads, they can add events, they can add readings. If they want to write a blog post, our emails front and center on there as well, they can pitch that to us. If they want to host an event, again, they can pitch that to us, and we try to make that really clear in all the communications that we've done, that we're really interested in this being a place for people to make what they want out of themselves. So Humanities Commons had an advantage from that perspective as well, that we felt it was something that we could set up relatively quickly, that the actual the group platform itself was pretty good for what we wanted, and we weren't going to have to spend loads of time setting up something from scratch. So we went with that idea that basically then that the platform on Humanities Commons could help us to be a kind of hub for some of these conversations.
Well, thank you for that. Also, like you've mentioned now, that this is more of like an open platform, or like for everyone who wants to join. So is that the target public, or what kind of target public do you have? Are you reaching for people interested in open access in general, or just people in the academia world in general? What is it your target in this case? If someone wants to go with that question.
I think Tom should go for that. I can see he's eager to go.
Sure, I'll start again. No, I think the audience it's actually quite broad in terms of anyone who would like to know more about open access books, or really to just talk and engage with others about open access books or aspects that relate to open access book publishing. And I think in terms of the people we've been able to engage thus far, and who are have also engaged in some of the activities, it's mainly people who are working with open access books, perhaps not as much as we do, because I think for the three of us it's really pretty much all that we do. But it's of course still not as large as journal open access is for journals, for instance. But I do think we really would like to also see it expand a bit more into different groups or clusters, perhaps. But yeah, I think it has been a logical start to start here with people who work a lot on open access for books, and to see how it can reach further audiences from there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've been talking about is mindful that we're all sort of Europe-based, that we don't want it to be too much of it's European only. You know, I mean, it's difficult, obviously, with time zones to try and include everybody in the events, for example, but we do our best to try and get a broad swath of people involved by having events kind of around this time as much as we can. We can get people from the US and people from European countries. And we've also been trying to reach out to people in Latin America, because we're very mindful there's a kind of thriving open access world there, where a lot of it's non-profit, in contrast to how a lot of open access is driven in Europe and in the UK. And also, I mean, the most annoying thing from a kind of time zone point of view for me is that it's more difficult to get people from kind of Australia and from that kind of area of the world involved, because you set up these things and you're like, oh, it's sort of 3 a.m. over there. But you know, ultimately, we would like to kind of to as we say, to kind of open it up for people. So if somebody who's based in Australia, for example, wants to host an event for that time zone, that would be great. We don't necessarily have to be there for every single one. You know, we can have conversations with people about what they want to do, and if we, you know, they seem like good people and we want to trust them with the platform, then we can say absolutely, we'll you know, promote an event, and we'll get people involved, and we'll try and be a platform for that as well. So I think, yeah, we're trying to, as Tom said, starting off with the kind of the people who are already engaged and people who are in our networks, but trying to go beyond those and to have conversations with people in other parts of the world. And I guess as well, like, we don't just want it to be a publishing thing. Like, it would be nice to attract researchers as well who aren't solely interested just in open access books, but who are interested in what that can do for their research and things like that. So yeah.
That sounds great. Thank you so much. I also have another question. So does the OABN, or Open Access Book Network, have any kind of funding, or do you have any funding body behind you, or how does it work in that case?
If anyone would like to fund our network,
completely open to it.
Very happy. We would welcome all donations. No, I'm kidding. No. We don't have any specific fund that is supporting this. Pretty much, it's all run on our enthusiasm at the moment. I mean, of course, it's part of our job description also to get this network going and developing it. But so no, there is no specific funding for now. But perhaps we can. That's the thing of the future, maybe.
For anyone watching who wants to contact you.
Yeah, but I think it is worth emphasizing that, like, you know, ODP and OAP, and, you know, there were people in those organizations who said, well, you know, there's me, there was Tom joining, we knew that Agata was joining, and they said, well, let's make this part of the job. And of course, then, you know, there are certain things that we then don't have time to do because we're doing this instead. So although there is no funding and it's it's running on enthusiasm. It is also that some of the organisations involved have made a decision to prioritise this as part of the work that we can do. So I think that's worth acknowledging as well.
Oh, that's great. Well, I hope someone who's watching and wants to contact them, can always get in touch. I have another question as well. So of all the activities you've put together, because I've seen you've put so many activities lately as well, with the bookmarks and some interviews. So which one has been your favourite, and why would you say was, if you have one, of course?
That's a hard one. I don't know. It's hard to choose, to be honest. I think that I liked our launch event a lot. I was very surprised to see that there were. We were counting, at least, I don't know about Lucy and Tom, but I was counting on maybe 5 people joining, to be honest. and then we had a crowd of 20 something. So that was actually really nice to see, because I think that it proved that it's helpful. What we do, and there is interest, and there is probably need for that also. So that was really, and that was also, I think, very motivating for all the 3 of us to see that there are people out there who are actually willing to come to these events, and who are wishing as well, and are also engaging with the network and proposing their own ideas. That was my favorite part of this meeting, I think, when we asked, what would you like to do with this network? Where would you like it to go, and to which direction to develop to? And there were really wonderful ideas, just pretty much on the spot during the meeting. So I think that was my favorite one.
Yeah, I think I liked the one about the toolkit, actually, which was the first kind of event we did, including someone that wasn't sort of the 3 of us, basically. And we had Elka Fueda from often to talk about the Open Access Toolkit. And the thing that I liked the most about that was there were a couple of people that came to the meeting with concerns or quite pointed questions about, well, who is this toolkit for, and are you trying to exclude people, and what's going on? And I felt like it gave a really useful platform for those questions to be asked and answered, and for those discussions to be had. And I think that was something that would have been more difficult to do, say over Twitter or whatever. And it was much better to get people into a kind of virtual room together and to talk about those issues. So I thought that was valuable.
For me, I think also definitely the opening event, which was quite exciting, because as Agata mentioned, I did have the same expectation that it might just be the 3 of us sitting there with 5 people, and that that there isn't actually so much interest in such a network. But I think that event proved that there are a lot of people actually who work at least to some extent with open access books, and really interested in such a network. And that, I think so far I can really say that there have been plenty of ideas and suggestions from the network, really, that we can, that really help us to keep it up and running.
That's great. Now that everything seems to be the network is growing a lot, are there any aspects that you find challenging? Anything that you think that it's getting a bit hard in the way?
Okay, shall I go first? I think for me the thing I find the hardest and the most challenging is what Lucy also mentioned a bit earlier, about the fact that we are obviously based in Europe, and also coming from a certain angle, and that of course the network itself and open access books is really something that concerns the entire globe, and I think a challenge is that we do have some limitations in terms of where we are ourselves, but also the time that we can dedicate to the network, and that also I think we have to actively invest a bit more time in trying to engage other parts of the world, who might be a bit further away from our own networks, and to make sure that we include them as well. But I think we have some ideas that can definitely help there.
I think as well, just sort of balancing it with everything else that we have to do. I find that quite challenging, partly because I think we're still figuring out the kind of, the possibilities of what the network could be, and how much we can do, and when we can get it done by, if that makes sense. So theoretically this could be a full-time job. There's so much you could do with it. So we have to sort of pick our battles and be like, right, well, this is what we're going to do at first. So this first couple of months is mostly about, getting the events up and running, trying to put some feelers out to some of these, other networks that we've been talking about. Like I've been emailing Crackso and ULAC and places like that, and just trying to kind of get it off the ground. But also knowing that to a certain extent I've got to kind of limit that because I have a lot of other stuff to be doing. So just knowing like how to make those judgment calls, I think, is quite challenging for me.
I think another challenge, but this one, let me just speak from a different angle a little bit here, because it's a challenge that I think we are dealing with in a really remarkable way. There's only 3 of us doing it, and each of us is based in a different country, which, of course, probably in 2020, that's not even an issue anymore because we're doing everything online anyways. But sometimes that's also that can be quite challenging to manage one project with 3 people, which can be a lot of people, but also not enough people in the end. So there is this balance there, and also of course working with 3 different schedules, 2 different time zones, fortunately. But I think that so far so good. So yeah, at least this challenge has been overcome, I think.
And now that you're talking about like the events you have set up these past few weeks, well, actually a month. So is there a dream event that you would like to host, or anything that you have in mind that would be great if the Open Access Book Network could go forward with it? It could be realistic or not realistic. Like I know we're in the middle of pandemic. You could talk about like a person like audience or something like that. Something we can do nowadays.
I think mine might be quite a humble one, so I could start. Like, I just would like more people to be getting involved on the site, like have more people adding events, have more people discussing stuff. Like, the events are good because once people are there, they ask questions and they get involved. Because of course they've set the time aside, they've made the effort to join the event, like they're obviously interested. But it's really great having that immediate feedback from people and having people directly involved in asking questions and whatever. And so I would really like the people to use the site more. And if anyone listening to this has ideas about how we might facilitate that or encourage that, then let us know. Because it would be great to see that being sort of spontaneously picked up more by people and being used more by people.
I know that I was supposed to probably come here prepared with a dream event in my head, but actually I didn't. But now that I think about it, I think that my dream would be to actually use this network as a platform to give voice to people who usually don't get the chance to be heard on a bigger stage, if this one is a bigger one, but perhaps bigger than what they usually have. So for example, in one of my recent searches, I came across an open access books publisher, a university press in Slovenia, and they do open access books. They publish up to 90 titles per year. I mean, seriously, no one has ever heard about them. So what I would like to do ideally is to find these little gems, definitely in locations that are not within the usual circle of, Western academia, and then give them this platform to show what they do, because sometimes they do really fantastic things, and it's good for us to know about it pretty much, and for them also to get heard by the usual Western centric community. Yep.
Yeah, we should put that on the list, Agata.
Yeah, now that I think about it, that is a really great idea. I will contact them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it's perhaps also a bit more, nothing too major. I think first of all, a live event would be nice at some point again, perhaps in 2021 or 2022. but let's see. But I think most of all, the thing I would be very interested in and would really like is if there is some perhaps a more of an event that is not run by ourselves, like Lucy also mentioned, and if there are other organizations from around the world who maybe don't. Maybe also have people who want to commit some time to being involved in this network, and to see that they can also organize their own events, even without our involvement per se. And perhaps the big one would be to have a kind of a parallel event in different parts of the world on same topics.
Well, that sounds amazing, I would say. So my next question is, like, you all work in open access, both within the Open Access Book Network and outside of it. So do you have a favorite open access book that you would like to recommend people now we're talking about open access in general? Like, encourage people to read open access? Agata saying no. All of them.
because no, to be honest, I was really thinking about it, and you know what, but perhaps this is in a way an answer to this question, because I actually, even though I work with open access books, I never really do choose titles that I would like to read just because they're open access. So that's not the main thing that I have in my mind when I want to read something, unfortunately, and that's probably not good, because I was supposed to be the first advocate for the openness here. But it really doesn't work this way, and I think that for many researchers, it's still not the first consideration that they have in mind when they look for content. If they're lucky enough to be affiliated with some kind of institution that has access to closed content. But so I actually do not have a favorite open access book. At one point, back in my days when I was still working for a different publisher, there was one book that I found quite interesting, but it's a little bit redundant because it's an open access book about the future of scholarly communication and of academic monographs. So perhaps that it's not even that exciting. Lucy, maybe you have something else, something more.
Well, I think that point's important, right? Because, you know, when you work on open access issues, that's the sort of front and center thing in your mind. But of course, you know, ideally we'll get to a place where open access is the means, it's not the end. You know, like the point of a book isn't that it's open access. The point is that it says something that people want to read and that they're then able to read it. And that second bit is what the open access helps with. So I think probably my favourite one might be one that I edited actually for OBP, which is called A Fleet Street in Every Town, the Provincial Press in England from 1855 to 1900. It's by Andrew Hobbs. And the reason that I liked it so much is that it's something I could have seen myself using potentially in my own research. I'm, you know, writing a thesis on 19th century adaptation. So I'm interested in how novels and poetry were adapted for the stage, and in that transition between page and performance. And this book is interested in how print culture, and particularly newspapers and local newspapers, shaped and were shaped by habits of reading among ordinary people. And so, you know, I was like, this is great, this is so interesting, it was great to edit, the author was great. And I could have seen myself actually using it, and I could imagine how it could be useful in somebody else's research. And so I think that's why that's my favorite one.
Yeah, I think for me, I also had to think. But my favorite one, and actually it's for a different reason again, is an introduction to open access by Peter Zuber. For the reason being that was actually the first time that I got in touch with open access, because I'm not necessarily coming from a deep research background or anything, but actually the first time I read that book, which funny enough I decided to buy in print because I wanted to read it in print. So I think there are always a lot of concerns about open access and print, but that kind of also proves that people still read print. But anyway, when I read that book for the first time, it kind of made it clear to me how open access really works on a basic introduction level. And also it kind of answered many questions I had as a student when trying to understand open access and why this is so, why this wasn't there yet. Why is this so difficult to achieve? And yeah, that actually was my way into the open access world. And for the first time then I realized that perhaps it's not as easy as one might think from the outside to make everything open access. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for that. So we've been talking about, like, what do you want the future of OABN to be, but what do you think the future of OABN will be? What do you think the next months will hold for you? Where do you see it going? I feel like I'm putting too much pressure on you today.
Not at all. I think that we have it all planned pretty much for at least 2 or 3 months in advance, kind of, at least. So we definitely want to do more of our bookmarks events where we invite people to talk about interesting projects that have to do with open access books. We will have Pierre Mounier talking about Oprah's P project. We will most likely have Martin Paul Eve talking about the newly published book about open access. Who else is coming? I forgot. Who else is scheduled actually? Oh, we also wanted to talk to Vanessa Proudman about the SCOS survey. Who else is? Do we have anybody else confirmed by now? We have lots of ideas, as you can see.
Yeah, we've got a lot of ideas. I think they're the confirmed ones, but yeah, there's quite a lot that we want to, a lot of people that we want to speak to. And I mean, another one that I'd like to do at some point is when the UKRI open access policy is finally announced. It would be great to try and get somebody from UKRI to talk to us about the implications of that for open access books. You know, there's loads of different people that we want to talk to, and yeah, events that we'd like to do. I think a lot of it for me has been building up to this week as well, and figuring out what we're doing for Open Access Week. And so I think once Open Access Week is over, it'll be a nice chance to pause and to think, right, okay, you know, we've got these events that are rolling on, and that's going to be exciting. And is there more we could be doing on the boards, or is there more we could be doing to reach people via Twitter, or you know, are there other things that we've not been doing as much of because we've been thinking about the events, and particularly thinking about the stuff we've been doing on Open Access Week. We put out a couple of blogs this week, so is that something we could be developing? So I think it'll be nice to pause after this week and just think what comes next, apart from the event.
Yeah, and I think also one nice thing that we've already seen is that we have received a few requests already from other people approaching us about ideas or suggestions, and whether we could cover that in the network in some form. And yeah, I think that's very encouraging to see, and also something that I think would make it much that would really make it possible for us to keep this up in the long run, with much of the support and input really coming from the community itself.
Also, one more thing that I think about it now. We are experimenting tomorrow with a new format of an event. We're going to host so-called open cafe. So pretty much the idea is that you bring your own coffee, you sit in front of your screen, and then we will discuss open access books. It's going to be a free flow conversation. We booked 40 minutes for this tomorrow. Let's see how it goes. A complete experiment from our side also. So let's see if it's something that will prove to be useful for people, then we will definitely probably set it up again. So let's see. It's tomorrow at 4 p.m. Berlin / Amsterdam time, or 3 p.m. In the UK.
That's right. It looks like you have like busy schedule ahead and also a lot of projects in you do, so that's really, really good. So I was going to say, do you have anything which you'd like to wrap up the session, say something to the people who are watching and will be watching later in YouTube? Like, why join, even though you've said it, but it's still like, why join? Would you like people to engage with you, where they can find you, or a bit of a summary?
I think that perhaps one aspect that we haven't touched on is something which I actually personally always find very annoying about discussions on open access. It's almost always about journals only. So this is we finally have the chance to talk about open access books only, or almost only. That's our main focus. So I think that that's a nice. It's a breath of fresh air, I think, in this journal-dominated landscape here. So yeah, that would be one of the reasons to join. If you are interested in open access books specifically, then this is your platform. This is where you can come join and bring your own coffee for tomorrow and talk to us.
Yeah, I think so. I think just to emphasize that, you know, it's easily accessible, it's freely accessible, and we kind of want it to be what people want to make of it. So, you know, if you're interested in open access books, if you're curious about them, want to learn more about them, if you want to have conversations about them with people who are working on open access books, then it's a really good place to come and to get involved and to ask your questions or like email us or add events to the calendar, whatever it might be, like just to kind of come and feel that you can make it your own in some way.
Well, thank you for that. We'll encourage everyone to join the network. They can actually follow you on Twitter as well at OA Books Network, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
And then also the Humanities Common page. Thank you so much, Lucy, Agata, and Tom, for being with me today. And yeah, so this will be in the YouTube channel really soon. So for everyone who's watching, join the network. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Laura.